Well, one of the greatest traditions we have is the Thanksgiving Day football game. And the biggest, most important tradition of all is the kicking off of the football.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Come on, Charlie Brown. It's a big honor for you.
This time I'm gonna kick that football clear to the moon!
Oh, hey, Vaughn.
Hey, Kim.
And hey, everybody. Welcome to But First Football post-Thanksgiving edition. It is Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So, how was yesterday?
Good. Pretty low-key.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I had a friend down, one of my old college friends, visited with her briefly, and then, got together with everyone else. So, yeah, all good.
What was the favorite in terms of food for you?
You know what? I had an incredible pastrami sandwich. and I'm
Wait, where? Was that an option?
It wasn't an option, but it was. I made it an option because I did go and get a workout in yesterday because I knew kind of the damage I had planned to do. And on the way, I grabbed a pastrami sandwich just because I just happened to be passing a particular sandwich shop that I just recently discovered and kind of loved. And
which one? What's it called?
It's called Royal Market. It's in Bankers Hill, and it's kind of the proprietor's Asian, and so she's got a lot of specialty things from Asia in her little store.
Right.
In terms of snacks and chips and other like some condiments. But the other thing she does really well is make sandwiches, soups, and so like I said, it's just recently gotten on my radar. I recently put it in my rotation, and I was passing. I was like, well, it's like I'm starving right now. I just got done working out. It's like we probably won't eat for a while, so yeah, I'm gonna grab a sandwich, and it was. And I hadn't had the pastrami, which is, again, I'm late to the pastrami game. I didn't really, like, growing up, eat pastrami, salami, any of the yummies. Well, pastrami, where have you been all my life? It was amazing.
So you heard it here, folks. Vaughn's favorite Thanksgiving dish was a pastrami sandwich.
Yes. Listen, it had banana peppers, pepperoncinis, candied jalapenos. Yeah, it was awesome. It was incredible.
No, that works for me. I mean, I wouldn't eat the pastrami, but I'm good with
right.
Unorthodox food on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Well,
what about you?
We had a busy day here, and I am frequently overestimating my abilities to do like a lot of things on the same day, and I do it all the time. So yesterday started with me realizing, oh my God, I'm going to have to get up earlier than I thought and get moving because I was doing Meals on Wheels. So I got up, got on the Peloton, did my rides, and then my friend Anthony, who was going to go with me to Meals on Wheels, was sick. So poor Elizabeth, who had been out the night before with friends, a little bit late out on the town, she's a trooper. She showed up for her mom, and we went out and we delivered those pies for Meals on Wheels.
Nice.
So we did that. And then we came home, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't completed my workout. So I had to get out and complete my workout. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to start cooking. So it all worked out. And it was really, it was just the three of us, and I don't think we've ever done that before, but it was really very, very nice. James did the turkey for Elizabeth, and Taquito, and it came out quite lovely, and they were pleased with that. And then I did all the sides, so we had mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, roasted vegetables, Elizabeth's favorite creamed corn, cranberry orange relish, and I think that was it. So we did well. Elizabeth and I curated a lovely playlist. We had
I listened to a bit. Yeah, it was very good. Very, very good.
It was good. It was good. But the funny thing is, I could hardly stay awake till halftime of the night game. I told Elizabeth, I just got to make it to halftime, and I barely made it to halftime.
Now, where are you getting tryptophan from? Because you're not. It's not
It
from the
was not
turkey.
tryptophan. It's called overextension
Gotcha.
and overestimation. No, the tryptophan thing though, James has been he's struggling today. Him and Taquito. But so the football yesterday, so I was complaining because I'm like, the first two games are going to suck. They're going to be awful. They're going to be blowouts. And the third game, the game I thought would have been the best game, was the game that sucked.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be the competitive one also. Yeah. Who knows?
So who knew? But you know what? Sometimes it's those divisional games. Those, you know, even no matter how bad the
Things
one team might be.
Yeah.
There's a divisional game happening now, the Raiders and the Chiefs, and I just can't see how that's going to be any good. It's on in the background, but Aiden O'Connell is our quarterback for the Raiders. But I don't know. But anyway, so lots to talk about. We were going to start our fundamentals today talking a little bit about officiating.
Yes.
Which I think we all have been the victims of. Well, I personally have not, but my team has been the victim of terrible officiating on occasion. But it's a thankless job, I'm sure. It cannot be easy. So you were going to share with us some thoughts on officiating.
Yeah, and I'll just revisit some of the thoughts I've talked about previously in our conversations about the refs and their ability to cover these great athletes getting up and down the field, and they're of a certain age because, you know, they need a certain amount of gravitas to, one, deal with the athletes. They need to be respected. And if you have some 20-year-old arguing with the guy who's, you know, got a mortgage, a family, who's in his 30s, you know, maybe the respect level isn't going to be there in these high tension situations, right? So, but they do go through annual fitness testing because they need to keep up.
They run.
Yes. And the other stressor is, look, you're making split decisions. The crowd, you know, you're on TV, you know, the gravity of the situation in any given moment. So you need someone who can be able to handle that, right? Who isn't going to be influenced by maybe a prior relation, well, you know, whatever. But, and I only bring that up because I remember Stan Brock, who was the starter when I got to the Chargers, 15-year vet. Before every game, I would sit on the sideline and I'd watch Stan go to every ref, reference him by his first name. He knew everyone's first name, and they just have this little conversation. And I bring it up to say, because everyone always talks, you know, what's the biggest issue? Bias. Hey, the fix is in, right? Well, it's not the fix, but human nature. They're humans, right? And so I'm sure he got the benefit of a call because reciprocity is one of those psychological things that happens whether you are aware of it or not. Like, I'm sure the refs are saying, okay, I know what this guy's doing on a certain level, but at the same time, I'm sure they appreciate it. And whether they know it or not, like, oh, you know what? I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I could have called holding there, but you know what? It wasn't so egregious, right?
But Stan is so nice.
Yes, exactly. But
interesting.
Yeah. But obviously the headlineman, you can always point him out because he has the white hat. And ultimately, when the refs kind of have a conference, there's a call. And I guess I should say first, everyone kind of has their role, their job. You know, the line judge obviously is watching the offensive, defensive line. The back judges are watching what goes on between the receivers and the secondary. And everyone has their role. But when but everyone's watching the action, and once a play unfolds and the flow of the play, you're not necessarily only watching. You're aware of what's going on the whole field, right? And that's their job. And so when a controversial play or a disputed call comes up, they try to get a consensus, but ultimately the head judge is the ultimate decider, right? And he'll ultimately make the call. And
so wait, the guy in the white hat is the head judge.
Yes.
His title is head judge?
He's the head
Or is
ref.
he a referee?
He's the head ref. Yes.
He's the head referee. Okay.
Yes.
Because there's a line judge and yeah.
Yes. And uh and so, like I said, they try to come to a consensus, and look, they do a good job. And to people's concerns about bias and wanting maybe, and it's not even always, oh, they want a specific team. When people are, oh, they want a specific outcome because this makes sense for the NFL. Well, they track all the calls, all the stats, and the stats clearly show that rarely is that ever the case, right? Like, the games are actually called pretty fairly. And but I can understand how a fan who's a fanatic for their team in that moment, they're not hearing any of what I'm saying, right?
Yes, that's true.
But the other thing everyone should know is that the judges, the refs, they get reports on every call after every game to improve. They and they're judged, they're rated, and so they can be demoted or removed from their crew, and they're also rated in terms of the overall crew. Only the best, highly rated crews get playoff games, and that matters because
Right.
refs, the refs make anywhere from last time I checked about 200,000 to 250,000. But once you get playoff assignments, that you get more money. You get bonuses basically based on the games you play, and then hopefully ultimately the Super Bowl is more of a they don't do crews necessarily, but the most highly rated guys at each spot come together and do the Super Bowls, right? Because they just want the
Okay.
best people in the biggest game, the most important game with the most eyeballs.
But
What
they
else?
don't. So they've never worked together before then.
Well,
if they're doing the Super Bowl.
There is something to be said for that, but I would counter that, which is true, but I would counter that with, again, people are human, but as a group, crews get to be known for, they have tendencies as well, right? They get to be known for certain things,
Right.
whether they call more penalties or less penalties, whether they call more pass interference or really hard on the offensive line play, right? So that is kind of maybe the argument to having a crew intact going to do the Super Bowl, right? Because
Yeah.
we're I wouldn't say warned, but in our game plans they make it aware of, hey, this is the crew we have this week. Hey, they're known for throwing holding calls, so everyone keep your hands in. And
Right.
And to that point, a lot, it's not every practice, but often there are refs at NFL practices, and they're not necessarily the NFL refs, but what they want to do is like, say for instance with the holding. And I remember I was in the league when we made the transition from being able to chuck a receiver after 5 yards, right? Like they outlawed that, and so you don't want a guy practicing getting his hands on a guy at 6, 7, 8 yards, and then he gets in the game and he's getting flags all day. So they bring refs in, and especially in situations where teams are scrimmaging against each other. It's not necessarily a preseason game, but more so with the lack of preseason games, more teams are going to get together in a certain area and scrimmage each other in the preseason. And so there's definitely always refs at that. And those are most likely actual NFL.
So interesting. Now, let me ask you this. Did you watch the game last night?
I didn't. I was
the
fast
night game?
asleep. I was fast asleep.
Oh, that's right. So I noticed, Elizabeth and I noticed that the head ref, this was very fun. I'm going to have to demonstrate. This is how he was calling false starts, and there was a lot of them. But he started slower. He'd go, false start. And it really, it was noticeable. It was unique. And I thought, okay, so why is he doing that? Is it he's cold and he's trying to warm himself up because it was a little chilly? Or
Right.
That's just his signature false start call? I don't know. I feel like I've seen that guy before and I didn't notice it, but go back and watch.
Okay.
And tell me if you notice it. But I thought it was a little jazzy and kind of fun. So I'm good with a little rendition of a call, of a false start.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because the refs, one of the things they have to balance is they're responsible for kind of the flow of the game. That's one of the things. They don't want to be disruptive with their calls, right? So I'm sure there's instances where they could have called. Look, like they say, you can probably call holding on every offensive snap, right? But if the
Yes.
hands are inside the framework of the defensive lineman, he's not pulling on the jersey. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to, because for the sake of the flow of the game, it's better not to call all those holdings I could probably call very easily, right? And so they
Right.
never want to be the story, and actually putting a little flair into your calls, like that's kind of getting close to crossing
I
the
thought
line
it was
on
cute.
you being the story.
But maybe I just imagined it. But the other thing I will say, as I told you, I just was trying so hard to stay up until just halftime.
Yes.
There was a penalty called on every freaking play in those last 2 minutes of the first half.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to say I can make it till half. It was a hold. It was it was everything. It was really kind of ridiculous.
Well, here's the other thing too. Sometimes that because often it's like, oh, the call that wasn't made. Well, I go to the secondary again, but it's not illegal to have your hand on the receiver as a DB. You can have your hand on him. You can't have it like around his waist because then you're restricting him. You can't pull his jersey because then you're restricting him. But just simply before the ball gets there, having your hand either on his back, maybe even on his shoulder, is not necessarily in and of itself a penalty until you do that slight pull and you bring that shoulder back, right? And so sometimes things that the fans or we as fans look at and think are penalties, sometimes it's just not, right? Again, with the offensive line where our hands are inside, we've got our hands tight on his jersey like handlebars, but if our hands are in the framework of both of our bodies and I'm not pulling him, restricting his movement, then I can do that all day long, right? So that's
Right.
another thing.
Yeah.
What else is interesting? So something that's interesting, the majority of the people wants to get to the NFL. Look, they always have high level recruiting to bring people, and they have programs to identify people to be refs. But they typically have about 10 years of experience at like high level college before they get the opportunity. And like I said, they run them through the mental aspects, they run them through physical, like the tryouts are very tough. They have training camp basically just like the players. And they're big on diversity. They want like Sarah Thomas back in, I think it was
Yep.
2014, 2015. She was the first woman, and there's
Yep.
been several since her. And so another interesting point about NFL refs is that I believe they're the only professional sports league, at least here, that aren't full time referees.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah, many of them have part-time job, or excuse me, this is their part-time job. Many of them have full-time jobs, and this is just their side gig, right? And so many people think they should be full-time. And look, it's the biggest, most popular sports league, so I won't argue against that. But I'm not exactly sure how that would change any of the issues that do crop up, right? So yeah, I don't know how I feel about it either way, to be quite
It just
honest.
seems like I agree with you. I don't think it would change any of the issues, but I feel like that's just kind of crappy. Like to
Yeah.
your point, it's the biggest league, the most money, and they
Yes.
can't pay these guys to work full time.
Right. Right.
Because again, like you were saying, I mean, they have to go through training camp. I mean, they have to be, I would say, well, all officials. I mean, if you look at hockey, like those are some of the most amazing officials to watch. The things that those guys do, the way they have to jump over a puck or, but in all the sports, the officials are really like they are right in it, and you see these guys get tackled, you see them go down, you see it just feels like, come on, NFL, don't be so cheap.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I just thought about is one of the things that happens is the competition committee, right? Every year they have points of emphasis, whether it's a new rule change or a rule that's been on the book forever, but for whatever reason they determine they want to emphasize that. So what they'll do is they always send refs out to every team at the beginning of the year, and they kind of go down the list. Hey, here's the things that are going to be emphasized this year. Hits on the quarterback when that they made that big change, right? Like here's the new rules. And so what they'll do is during the preseason, they'll call that extra heavy. They'll be extra critical. And then once the regular season starts, they'll pull back and kind of call how they will for the rest of the year. Just kind of try to get everyone used to, hey, here's the new thing that's going to happen. Here's how we're going to call it, right? Yeah. So look, they take a lot of crap, and rightfully so in some instances, I think. But I will admit, look, it's a hard job, and especially with the scrutiny they're under in terms of, and especially with the technology now, right? Like every little thing is going to be analyzed, and they don't get the benefit of second by second slowing that thing down. And, they've got to do it, have the conviction, make the call, do it in the moment. And at the same time, in the back of their head, but I don't want to be the story of the game. It's the last play of the game, but at the same time, yeah, I could call pass interference, but unless he just tackles the guy, I'm probably gonna eat my flag, right? So it's a tough gig, and I salute to them, but yeah,
you're right, and I'm gonna try to be a lot more nice about them.
And I'll tell you what, in my career, I was not the most diplomatic or kindest in how I address them, like, because I'm usually talking to them in a stressful moment. Hey, that wasn't a bleeping hold, or if I'm on the sideline. The one time where a ref got the most angry at me, I've called refs out of their names. I was on the sideline, and I thought the other team's defensive, this was before I was the starter, I was just playing special teams. I thought the other team's defensive lineman was clearly lined up offsides. And I was giving the ref the business for a couple plays. And then I said the infamous words. I said, hey, take some pride in your job. He turned around and read me the riot act.
Vaughn.
He lost his mind. Oh my goodness, yeah.
I think that's probably one of the worst things you could say.
Well, because I was questioning the calls, but then I turned it into questioning his character, and he was not having it.
Did you ever come up against that guy again in a game and get a little extra holding calls?
No, because at that point, despite Stan's example that he set for me, I hadn't made it a point to kind of learn who these guys were yet. So it was out of sight, out of mind after he read me the riot act.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So officials, wow. All right, well, let's move into this week's football frenzy, because there's lots to talk about. And so we'll just go into the favorites. And so I had a different fashion favorite, but then I just realized I don't know what is going on with me, and maybe it's because I'm not in the business anymore. But I seem to be liking. My first choice was this guy from the Commanders who was dressed very cowboy chic, and then I'm like, why do I keep going for the cowboy chic? What's the deal? So I changed my mind, because then I saw this post on NFL Instagram with Amon-Ra St. Brown dressing for yesterday's game, and he looked great. He wore a Hugo Boss suit. He wore a shirt without a tie, but buttoned all the way up is beautiful. He looked fantastic. He looked so sharp and elegant. So I changed my mind. So my fashion fave, even though technically it's in this week, is Amon-Ra St. Brown and that whole Hugo Boss moment. So I'm going to try to get off the cowboy chic. I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit. So that was my fashion fave.
Well, I'll tell you, when you sent the picture of the this week for the cowboy chic, the one big issue I had, look, I'm not necessarily into cowboy chic. Maybe that's the thing. Probably not for me. but just the wide pant leg, I was just like, I'm not sure. Like, that
I
didn't
thought
work for
that's
me.
what you were going to say.
Yeah. That didn't work for.
Well,
I'm sure
I
Ashton will
moved
put that
on
up.
from it. I moved on from it.
Okay.
But favorites in terms of football last week, you know what I'm going to say. I mean, let's just celebrate the Buccaneers for a moment, coming off their bye. And I know they were playing the lowly Giants, but you, my friend, have told me many times that a win is a win in the NFL, and none of them are easy, although that looked a little bit easy. But Baker was bacon. Oh my gosh, he just was so on fire. And I will say that I did think his little celebration in the end zone was funny. Bucky Irving, wow, he's incredible. He just is like a little Energizer bunny. And of course, Mike Evans being back in, takes a lot of heat off of a lot of other players because he's always going to be double teamed. Oops. Vaughn. I could just keep talking about the Bucs, and then Ashton could edit whatever he wants out. But I thought it was an incredibly well called game. I am loving Liam Cohen at offensive coordinator. I think his play calling, I mean, they started out throwing the ball this time. It was beautiful. The defense played better. Unfortunately, it looks like Jordan Whitehead got hurt, so he's going to be out. He tore his pec or some such nonsense, but not nonsense. I'm sure it hurt really bad, but the defense looked a little better. So this Sunday we have Carolina, and Carolina, I mean, the Chiefs almost lost to them. So they're not like just laying down and rolling over, but I think we can pretty much destroy them. So that will be this Sunday. My frustrations are that the Cowboys are now starting to win. So I will blame Vaughn because he keeps saying that he's going to move on from the Cowboys. Their season is done. Well, they have won 2 games in a row, and that's kind of annoying because now they're in a division with the freaking Giants. Like, that gives them hope. But they're also in a division with Philadelphia, and Philadelphia really feels like kind of the team to watch in the NFC outside of Detroit and, of course, outside of the Bucs. And then my flop. Well, my flops would be that there's just a lot of really bad games. And I really think it's unfortunate that so many of the bad games are because the starting quarterback got hurt and they're playing some bozo, like Tommy Cutlets. Oh, forget about it. I've just been talking. I just decided I would do a monologue.
Okay.
So I have. So let me finish with my flop, and then you can do your frustrations and flop. You can do all yours.
Okay.
So I was just talking about, first of all, I blame you. My frustrations that the Cowboys are winning, and I think it's your fault. And then my flop, my flop is the bad games, and the bad games that are coming from the starting quarterbacks getting hurt. And then you're getting, these random backups and they're playing, and the games are bad. Like, I don't even know who was playing for Brock Purdy. I don't even know who that guy was. By the way, why wasn't it Josh Dobbs? I'm just asking, because I think that Josh Dobbs could have played a lot better, whoever that guy was.
Well,
so
there was a recent game where the number 2 was, was it the Giants? Where they played, instead of playing the number 2, they played, I can't remember.
Tommy Cutlets.
Yes.
Forget about it. Yeah. Well, and then he got hurt, so he didn't even travel with the team to Dallas on Thanksgiving. So I feel like these teams are paying like so much money for these starting quarterbacks who, and we've talked about this before, how there really is going to have to be a separate salary cap just for that.
Yes,
but then
I agree.
The problem seems to be they can't afford a decent backup. And these guys are going down. I mean, they're going down. Look at Dak out for the season. So Cooper Rush, I mean, he's got an opportunity to get a little better because and I don't know why they're not playing Trey Lance either, but that's a whole nother thing. But it just feels like once these teams lose their starting QB, look at what happened to Miami when Tua was out. You know, there's no way for them to make the playoffs. They're not going to be able to catch up from that. So I just think that's my flop.
You know, well, part of it, they need a change of philosophy because typically the starter will get all the reps with the number one
Right.
team, right? And it's very rare that the backup gets any reps. And they probably need to do more of even if it's only 75-25 to get him those reps and not just, hey, let's get him some extra reps after practice, after he's done running the scout team. Like, it's important. And because I know the syndrome. I know especially those old school guys who, you know, hey, first team, I know you're getting a drink right now, but you got to get in for this play. And it's the most basic play we run versus the most basic defense that you learned on day one. And it's like, you know, but to them, that's comfort for them when the number one guy is getting all the reps, right? And so, no, I agree. You wouldn't think, of course, these guys are in the NFL, so you expect a certain level of competency, but at the same time, like, how can there be that much drop off between the starter and the backup? Like, he's supposed to be.
Well, let me just tell you,
capable.
When Baker got a little stinger,
yes,
and I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, we cannot have Kyle Trask come into this game. I know it's the Giants. I know we have a 30-point lead. We can't have Kyle Trask come into this game. Like, that's how I feel.
No.
So, yeah, you're right. I mean,
and guess who else feels your pain? Those owners. That's why they changed the rules. Trying to, but you know, football's violent, so you can only do so much, right?
Yeah. Well, so what was your favorite last week?
I'll do my favorite last, but my frustration,
okay,
the same. Cowboys, I thought I was done with them. They will not die.
I think it's your fault.
Apparently,
it's your fault.
I even actually heard an analyst say that, like, they're on a hot streak, and I'm like, no, stop it. Jeez, we just go. And unfortunately, again, they're still in it, and so. But you know, what are you going to do? My flop was Eberflus, not so much just because of the firing today, but because of, I think, how he got fired. I truly believe, look, once they committed to him last year and didn't get rid of him last year, and they're bringing in a young quarterback, I think his problem was there were too many other things other than just the development of the quarterback. That's clearly part of it, other than the winning. Yesterday's a perfect example. There's issues with the time management at the end of the game, and then he comes out and he doubles down, and it's almost like he puts his owner and his GM in a position like, what can I do with this guy? I can't, and I get. Look, if I change up in the face of adversity, then none of what I do does matters. But at the same time, just there's nothing with doing a little mea culpa, saying, look, maybe I didn't handle that the best, and because when you say no, I handled it correctly. Well, what can you do as a G? Well, I gotta let the guy go, right?
You didn't.
Yes, exactly. So that's my fault. And there's been other instances of time management, the play at the end of the Washington game. So I think those little things added up, and they're just like, look, we just gotta pull the trigger now. Get started on next year early.
Totally agree. And I was telling James and Elizabeth, I'm like, I'm just waiting for that text or that alert that Eberflus has been fired. And sure enough, it happened, because that was just a debacle. And how sad. They really could have won that game. Yes. And that would have been huge. That could have been like such a confidence booster for a young quarterback. And I'll just go back and remind everyone, the only team who has beaten Detroit, thank you, Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
But you're right. Like, how would that have been to launch them into the last month of the season, right? Like, that would have been huge. Yeah. But then my fave is that this is when the real season starts, and so
it does.
I looked today, and look, all 32 teams are eligible for the playoffs with 5-6 weeks to go. Yes, no one's eliminated. Even the Raiders, no one's eliminated yet. But
they're tied right now, 3-3.
And this year, look, I wouldn't be surprised if they won today. Just the Chiefs are not world beaters.
I know, because it's Kansas City.
The Chiefs are vulnerable, and again, an interdivision rivalry. heck of history, right? And so you never know. They might raise up again, look, and launch themselves into this last part of the month. But and look, after November is the real season, and everyone's in it to win it. And everyone talks about parity as if it's a bad thing, and I get the arguments, like no super teams, no great teams, but I love it because everyone's eligible. The competition is going to be so fierce, and I just think it's going to be an awesome last finish, because look, there's no world beaters. The Chiefs are vulnerable. I'm still not buying the Bills. I don't care that they beat the Chiefs. I think they're vulnerable.
I agree.
Pittsburgh 8-3, but they're not great, and so. But I think that's going to foster a lot of competition, a lot of great games. Maybe not the nationally televised games, but there will be some great games going down the stretch.
Well, the only plus to the Cowboys playing better is they won't be so torturous on Monday Night Football, maybe.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
I would agree with you. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. And in my little monologue a few minutes ago, I did say that we play Carolina on Sunday this week, and that's Dave Canales. You know, that he's going to want to beat the Bucs, his old team, but I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, it is an exciting. It's all very exciting.
But look, that's a great storyline. Bryce Young looks like, you know what? He's actually competent, right? We can't be so quick to judge. So, you know, it's all, there's going to be a ton of good stuff these last few weeks of the season. And then we're going to blink and Super Bowl will be here. Like, it's not that far away.
I know. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I guess we hit it this week, and Ashton is not on with us, so he'll have his fun putting this together. But we will be back at it next week. So everybody, please like us, follow us, subscribe to us on all the various platforms. But First Football, and we will be back at you next week. Right, Vaughn?
Alrighty. Yep. Sounds good. See you next time.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.